What's up, cooks? Welcome to the Card Kitchen. I am the Card Chef, and today we are cooking up all of the cards that were revealed for the A2 set that is called Space Time Smackdown. And these are 2 packs. You can see them on the screen. They're 2 instead of 3 like Genetic Apex, and we got a bunch of reveals. So we are going to get into those reveals, talk about all the cards, the list of known cards, their strategies, and what decks they may fit in. I'm also going to have a couple of decks at the end of the video, and we're also going to talk about some cards that weren't revealed that we're pretty sure we're going to get, especially since they are going to be Gen 4 Pokemon most likely anyways. But with that being said, let's get into the video. So I got the list up on the screen, but before we get into it, I just want to ask for everybody watching who is watching the video and subscribe to my channel to please head on over to my other social medias and follow me on them as well. I've been posting like crazy on Instagram and Twitter with all the new stuff that's coming out, as well as in my Discord. And as for the Discord, I have a bunch of channels set up in my Discord for different things in Pocket. We got the general chat, we got the deck discussions, the collections that you can share with people. I also have a section coming out for trade-in so that we can all go in and have cards and postcards for trade-in. I also have a channel so that you can find specific battles with people if you want. And then I also have a new section that I just created called custom cards. And so what I want people to do is to go in there and post all your custom cards, and then I will do a video each week with those custom cards and going through them and discussing them on whether we think they're good or not. So go on in there, post your custom cards, and you'll get them on one of my videos. But now let's get into this list. So the first obviously one, I'm just going to go through this list quickly and then we'll go into the actual cards. So it's Dialga EX and Palkia EX. Obviously we also got Pachirisu EX, which is an electric type Pokemon. We'll get into that. I'm assuming we're also going to have at least 2 more EX like Mythical Island, and because it's actually a full set, I'm assuming we're going to get 15 like we did in Genetic Apex, but there's no way of knowing until it actually comes out. And then we got the 3 starters, the Torterra, the Infernape, and the Empoleon. We only saw their basics, we didn't get to see all their evolutions, but I'm guessing we're getting EX and baby versions of those. We got the Lucario, which was revealed as well. We didn't see the Rilio. Then we got the Gibble that was revealed, but we didn't see the Gabite or the Garchomp. We'll get into all these cards later, and obviously the Togepi, Togetic and Togekiss, and then we got the Eevee and the Leafeon. I'm assuming we're also going to get Glaceon because that's also Gen 4. We got the Murkrow and Honchkrow, and then we got the Cresselia and a Cynthia, which combines with Garchomp and Togekiss. That's how we know we're for sure getting the Togekiss, because we didn't see any of the Togepi or anything like that, but we saw that Togekiss works with Cynthia. And then we're getting a bunch of Pokemon tool cards, and the reason we know that is because the Pachirisu EX, its attack has an effect that becomes stronger when it has a tool card. But we also, I'm pretty sure we're going to get some other cards that we weren't revealed, and so let's get into the first card, which is Lucario, and explain why I think these Pokemon are for sure coming. So this is the Lucario, and it's actually one of my favorite cards. But before we get into all its stats and its abilities and all that kind of stuff, I want to look at the artwork. First of all, number one, this artwork is fantastic. It's actually a very beautiful card. But as you can see, there are 2 Pokemon on here that we do not have in the game yet. We do have the Hitmonchan and we do have the Minchao, but we do not have the Medicham or the Hitmontop. Now, both of these Pokemon are actually not Gen 4, so it's interesting that they're on the card, because obviously I believe we're probably going to get all of the Gen 4 Pokemon, but these 2 specifically are not Gen 4. So it's super duper interesting because they are on the card. So I do believe we will get them. Otherwise, why would they be on the card? So I do think, and this is just me, my personal thought, is that we will get a Medicham and a Hitmontop. Hitmontop obviously makes a lot of sense. We already have the Hitmonchan and the Hitmonchan. Hitmonlee. And the of course, they all evolve from the same baby Pokemon. I think it's called the Tyroger or something like that. I forget how to pronounce it. But I don't think we're going to get that. We might. But because Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee are already basic cards, I don't think we're going to get that baby version. And if we do, I don't know. It would be weird if Hitmotop evolved into it, but Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee didn't. And for the Metacham, it would be really cool if we got that as well. And again, I think we are, because it's on the artwork. So I doubt they would put it on the artwork unless we're getting it. But let's get into this card's stats. Lucario, not an EX Pokemon. In case some of you thought this was an EX, it's not. It's just a full art. It's 100 HP, obviously a fighting type, and it has 2 retreat costs and weak to the standard Psychic, because it's actually a fighting type and not something like a ground or rock type that would be usually weak to a Leaf. It has 2 energy attack that are both fighting type energy, and it only does 40 damage, but that's okay because it has one of the best abilities I've seen right now, and it's called Fighting Coach. And it says attacks used by your fighting type Pokemon do 20 plus damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So the first thing of note is that this will not work with Hitmonlee, because Hitmonlee can only attack the bench, but that's still okay because there's still a ton of Pokemon that are fighting type that are being used in the game and in the meta. Specifically, for instance, Aerodactyl will now do 100 damage, which is super good, because if it does 100, it's going to hit Pikachu for weakness, which means it's going to do 120. We also have the Marshadow, who already does 100 damage. It will now do 120. With weakness, it will do 140, which means it will guarantee knockout of every single card in the Pikachu deck, because Zapdos is not weak to fighting, but it has 130 HP, so it will be knocked out. And the cool thing about this, by the way, is you can stack this ability. So if you have 2 Lucario, you are actually going to do 40 damage. And the reason for that is because if you noticed on the superior ability that we got from Mythical Island, it said it does not stack. This one does not say that, which means it will stack. So if we get a game, or a deck that plays 2 Lucario, you will get plus 40, and that's super relevant, not just for Marshadow, which by the way would do 140 with just the Lucario, 150 with the Giovanni, 170 damage with weakness. So that is super duper impressive. And then of course, when you look at something like a Primeape from Mythical Island that already does 50 with 1 Lucario, that's 70, with 2, that's 90, with the Giovanni, that's 100, with weakness, that's 120, and guess what? That also knocks out a Pikachu. So fighting decks, I actually think, are going to get super duper strong. And not just that, I have a deck that I'm going to show you later, and it's actually with Hitmonchan, because now that we get these boosts, basically what you're going to be able to do is play a Hitmonchan. Yes, your first attack might only do 30 damage for its base, but then once you get a Lucario online, it's going to do 50, possibly 70, possibly 80 for 1 energy, and that is an insane amount for a basic, and 1 energy doing 80 damage would be absolutely incredible. Now, I do think no matter what deck this is in, I still think you're definitely going to be playing at least 1 Hitmonlee, because I do not think, regardless of what the cards that we get, that Gyarados is going to be going anywhere, at least at the beginning. So you're still going to want to be playing those Hitmonlees to be able to snipe those Magikarps. But anyways, with that being said, let's get into the next card. So this is the Palkia. It's a basic water type with 150 damage. It has 2 retreat, and it's weak to lightning, which is super annoying. I thought, or at least I wished, that the new cards coming out in the new set would have been weak to something like Grass instead of Lightning, because Pikachu decks are still super duper strong. They're literally the best deck in the game and have been since the beginning. So that's super frustrating. But if I'm being honest, the Celebi Executor decks honestly are like super good right now too. They have one of the highest win rates in the game right now. So I don't know if it would have made a humongous difference, to be honest, at this point. But I don't think making the best deck in the game any stronger by bringing out new Pokemon that are weak to that deck. But anyways, we're going to get into its 2 attacks. The first move, Slash, for 1 energy is 30 damage, which is pretty significant. We just talked about Hitmonchan and how it's a basic Pokemon that does 30 damage. It only has 80 HP. When you look at something like this that has the same attack but has 150, it's almost double. That's actually insane. And then when you compare it to something like Zapdos, who is 130 HP only and only does 20 damage for 1 energy, that is a very big, significant difference. So that is actually, like the first attack, a lot of people might ignore that, but this is actually pretty significant. But the second attack here, the Dimensional Storm, does 150 damage for 4 energy, 3 water, 1 colorless. I don't think the colorless makes any difference, to be honest. But the effect says discard 3 energy from this Pokemon. This attack also does 20 damage to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon, so a totality of 210 damage, which is pretty huge. But to be honest, I'm not really sure if you'll ever really notice that 20 damage that you're doing on the bench. I'm not saying that it's not significant, but I think what you're trying to do and what the meta is going to try to do is look for that 150 plus any breakpoints that you would want to get. So something like with a Giovanni doing 160, you're basically knocking out anything that is Executor level HP and below. So that's Executor, Mewtwo, Pikachu, Zapdos, Moltres, and then on top of that, with a Giovanni plus weakness, you're also knocking out a Charizard. So that's pretty significant. Outside of that, you're probably only getting this attack off once per turn, which means you're probably only going to be using it late game, which means you can pair it with something like a Starmie, because what you can do is you could bring out a Starmie at the beginning of the game, put your energy on it, and get at least 1 prize card, and then before it gets knocked out, you can retreat it for free, so you're not wasting any energy, and then you can also pair it with Vaporeon and put all those energies on your Palkia and finish the game off. So that's one of the things I think this deck will do, or this card will do, is be an end game attacker to finish up games, kind of like Raichu was and is still in some of the Pikachu decks. But there are other ways I think you can play this. I think it could be a lead Pokemon because your 150 HP is super duper strong. And you can do a 30 damage until you get the energies on it that you want. And because you're still building Misties, you're going to be able to ramp energy on this pretty quickly. And if you get 6 energy somehow on this, you can actually attack twice in a row. And even if you lose all your energy and you still have 1 left, you can still continue to attack with Slash. Now, will this be in Gyarados decks? I'm not so sure. If this becomes the lead Pokemon in the Gyarados decks over the Druddigon, I still think the Druddigon decks will have the advantage because it's super important. It's an integral part of the deck to allow Gyarados to get those breakpoints to be able to knock people out in one shot. Now you could say that instead of getting 20 damage from your Druddigon, you can just attack with Slash and then use your Leaf Retreat and put any energy you have on it. Or just use Slash, not put any energy on it, hit with Slash, Retreat, and then bring in your Gyarados. But what ends up happening there is you have to actually attack into the EX Pokemon and then retreat and hope you didn't get knocked out either, which means if you did, you'd be giving up 2 prize cards. Whereas if you just have the Druddigon, they're going to attack you and there's no way for them to really heal. Whereas if you hit with Slash, then it's their turn, they get to heal. So they might actually ruin your breakpoint that you want. Whereas if it's a Druddigon, I still think they'll have the advantage because yes, they attack you, yes, they knock you out, but they only get 1 prize and they don't get to heal that 20 damage that came off, which means Gyarados will most likely be set up for that breakpoint. So I don't think this will replace Druddigon or be in Gyarados decks, but you never know. I actually think this will be best in a Blastoise deck, and I have a Blastoise deck and a Starmie deck that I made, and I will show you guys at the end of the video, and I will get into the Blastoise version a little bit later. But with that being said, let's get into Dialga. So this is the Dialga, and it's a basic metal Pokemon with 150 HP as well. Again, pretty significant for a basic Pokemon. The only other Pokemon that have that 150 on a basic is a Mewtwo and the Palkia. So 150 HP is pretty significant. It has a 2 retreat cost, and like all the other metal Pokemon, it's weak to fire, and this has 2 moves. I'm going to talk about the second move first because the first one is the one that everyone's talking about because it's so good. But it's heavy impact, 2 steel and 2 colorless. Heavy impact does 100 damage. Now this isn't huge, but it might be if you consider how fast you might be able to get it online going forward because of its first attack. For 2 metal energy, metallic Turbo does 30 damage, and take 2 steel or metal energy from your energy zone and attach it to one of your benched Pokemon. Now, this doesn't say specifically steel Pokemon. So this is actually the first card in the game that could ramp energy onto any Pokemon. It's not a type specific, so that is going to be super duper valuable. However, the way they balanced the card is they made sure that its attack had to be 2 metal energy specific, which means you're most likely not going to be playing it in dual energy decks. I do have a couple of cards that I think this pairs with very well. And I'll get into those later. I also built a deck for this, so I'll show you guys that later as well. But this is super cool. So I'll say the standard ones that obviously you can pair it with. Anything colorless. So anything like Pachirisu EX, Wigglytuff EX, and of course the 2 most significant ones are going to be Tauros and Mew EX. Tauros to be able to get that 120 damage on any EX Pokemon, and obviously Mew to be able to copy any attack. And not just that, like I guarantee you Mew is in every single Dialga EX build because of something like Palkia. If we're ever in a Palkia game, and Palkia is actually like a very popular deck, you bring out a Mew and you have metal energy on it, it does not have to discard the water energy because it has no water energy on it, just like it doesn't have to discard for Charizard's attack. So that's going to be pretty awesome. Doing 150 against a Palkia will be absolutely huge. It will one-shot it. So Mew EX's value has just gone up a ton with this Dialga deck. And there's a ton of other synergies. Actually, we'll just talk about them right now. I won't put them on the screen, but just so you know, the 3 that I thought of right off the bat, there's actually 4, which I heard someone else talk about. And it was Executor EX from Mythical Island. I completely forgot about that one, but that only takes 1 grass energy, and it could be played in a metal deck where you don't have to play dual energy because the Executor or the Execute could ramp its own grass energy from the energy zone, and then you can retreat it before it gets knocked out, and then put all the metal energy on to it, the Executor, and then bring the Executor out and start attacking it for pretty big damage. But the 3 that I thought of is actually another grass Pokemon, and it's Celebi. Now, this would have to be a dual energy deck, but I don't think you would mind too much, to be honest. But it might not be very consistent, but I still think it would be pretty strong and a pretty cool deck because Celebi only takes 1 grass, 1 colorless, and then its attack flips a coin for every energy it's attached to it. Not every grass type energy, every energy. So it would be pretty cool to actually pair this with Celebi and take out the superior altogether and build a completely new deck. Maybe something like 2 Dialga, Mew EX, a Tauros, and a Celebi EX all in the same deck. I think that would actually be pretty strong because if you can get this attack off a couple times, you can just fill your Celebi up with a ton of energy and then come on in and just flip coins until the game is over pretty much. So that's a pretty cool one. Another one I thought of was Scentiscorch. Center Scorch is 4 energy, and you do have to discard a fire, but it only requires 1 fire. The rest are all colorless, so that's something that maybe people can look into. And then the Golem from Genetic Apex. So we've actually seen Golem decks played with like just dark energy and Weezin. So basically what you would do is you would tank with your Weezin and then put a bunch of dark energy on, at least 3 on your Golem, and then ramp the final energy with Brock. So what you could actually do is just put your energy on Dialga, tank with it for a bit, ramp energy onto your either your Geodude, Graveler, or Golem as you're evolving it, and then put that final energy with Brock when you're finally ready to bring it in, which means you would also have Golem as a 150 attacker in your deck alongside this guy who's tanking and rampant energy while doing chip damage. And as long as you're playing Leaf, you can get this out quite quickly before getting knocked out. You can also throw in things like Blue to make sure you don't get one-shotted by anything that's going to be doing 150 damage. The one thing I actually don't like about this attack is that it actually does damage. I would actually prefer that it doesn't, because with all the Druddigon out, as long as you're not actually doing damage, you won't be hit by Rough Skin. But in this case, you would be, which is super unfortunate, but it is what it is. So I think this actually has a ton of possibilities coming out. Again, I don't really know if they'll actually be all super duper good, and I don't even know if it will be paired with Melmetal. I have a Melmetal version of a deck, but it's pretty standard. I'll show it to you later. But it might not even be played with Melmetal. I think it'll honestly, you can easily just make a 2 Dialga, 2 Tauros, 2 Mew deck, and you'll probably be very happy with that deck, to be honest. But I do think there's going to be, this is the one card that's going to be experimented with the most out of every single card. So I cannot wait to see what people come up with. But with that being said, let's get into the next card. So we're going to talk about Cynthia next. I think this is a really interesting card. Before we do, though, I'm actually not going to talk about the starters all that much. I won't bring them up on the screen or anything. We only saw their basics. We didn't get to see what they evolve into, and we don't know what their attacks or their abilities might be, if they have any. However, I do want to say that for Infernape, I do believe its attack or ability, if it has one, will have to do with Burn. We already got confirmation that tool cards are coming out in this set, and we learned about tools and Burn at the same time in an article, as well as Confusion. So I believe Confusion will come out as well. And Infernape, traditionally in the Pokemon TCG physical card game, has either moves or abilities that have to do with Burn. So I wouldn't be surprised if it has to do with the Burn ability. But let's get into Cynthia. So Cynthia says, during this turn, attacks used by your Garchomp or your Togekiss do plus 50 damage to your opponent's Pokemon. So this confirms a couple of things. One, I guarantee none of these Pokemon, Togekiss or Garchomp, will be EX. In fact, it doesn't say EX on the card, which means it's most definitely not an EX. But even if it was and it still worked, I still don't think it's going to be an EX, simply due to the fact that usually supporter cards traditionally that work like this, things like Blaine, things like Koga, things like Brock, all the cards they work with, and Lieutenant Surge as well, all the cards they actually work with, the specific Pokemon on the card, have never been EX, so I don't think these will be EX, and I don't think we'll have EX versions of these cards. But what is cool is we do know Garchomp I'm almost positive it will be a Dragon type, because its pre-evolution form that we saw the actual card of is a Dragon type. But with that being said as well, there have been times where Garchomp was a fighting type. In fact, there's actually been sets where he was both, came out as a version of fighting and a version of Dragon. It was the exact same card. However, there was 2 versions of it. One that was Dragon, one that was fighting. So we might get something like that too. I'm not so sure, but it would be pretty cool if we did. And then, of course, we know about the Togekiss because of this card. Now, we don't know how strong these Pokemon will actually be. We don't know if they'll require a lot of energy, minimal energy, and we don't know if their attacks will be very strong or very weak, because they are getting an extra 50 damage, but I'm assuming Garchomp will have a pretty decent attack. It is a stage 2, and then plus that 50 will probably bring in certain EX Pokemon into range. So especially if you're putting it in like maybe a Druddigon deck, it might actually be pretty decent as a single price deck if you're adding an extra 50 damage on top of whatever its attack is. So also, I just want to say that Cynthia, as traditionally as well, has worked with Garchomp. In fact, I'm going to bring a Garchomp card up on the screen right now and a previous Cynthia card to show you how they work together. So these are the Garchomp and Cynthia from the Papers TCG that came out in like the same packs. It was a Sun and Moon pack. And as you can see, so Cynthia just has a normal like kind of draw effect. Shuffle your hand in your deck, then draw 6 cards. It has nothing to do with the Cynthia that we have now. However, Garchomp had an attack called Royal Blades, where it said if you played Cynthia this turn from your hand during this turn, this attack does 100 more damage, and it had 100 base, which means it was doing 200 damage, which was actually significant for the time and was pretty huge for a single price Pokemon, even if it was a stage 2. So I'm wondering, obviously Cynthia already works with Garchomp, but I wonder if Garchomp will work like in reverse with Cynthia as well, either getting another attack boost just like this card, or perhaps the reverse, since Cynthia is the one giving Garchomp an attack boost instead of Garchomp getting the attack boost from its own effect. Maybe the effect of its attack after being boosted with Cynthia will allow you to draw cards. So that would be pretty cool, and I wonder if that is actually going to happen. It would be a pretty cool thing. So instead, again, so Cynthia now will boost Garchomp's attack by 50. It would be pretty cool that if this attack said, if you played Cynthia from your hand this turn, shuffle your hand into your deck and draw like 3 cards. That would be pretty dope, because it would be kind of like they reversed the effects and still made them very similar to cards that already existed. But anyways, with that being said, let's get into the next deck. Or sorry, the next card. So this is not the next deck, it's the next card. Apologies for that. And it's the Pachirisu EX, and it's pretty cool. Now, we don't know its health. We didn't get to see it in the video, but I'm assuming it will be probably around Pikachu, either 120, maybe 110, or maybe 130, because its attack is a little weaker, but possibly a little more reliable. It depends. We'll get into that right now. So its attack for 2 electric energy, just like Pikachu. The Sparking Gadget does 20, plus does another 40 if it has a tool card attached to it. So very similar to Pikachu in regards to its damage output. 2 energy for 80 instead of 2 energy for 90. They both require a specific thing to happen. Pikachu obviously needs to have its entire bench filled with electric type Pokemon, whereas Pachirisu doesn't, but does require a tool card. So I think either one, you'll either play these in the same deck. So this might just get put into the Pikachu deck as another possible attacker with some tool cards, or this will play in the same Pikachu style of deck, but replace Pikachu. And the reason I say this is because it depends which one is more reliable, right? Is it easier to get 3 basic electric down on your bench in a Pikachu build, or is it easier to get a Pachirisu and a tool card onto it? I think only time will tell. A lot of testing will be able to tell. I am assuming this will just be put into that deck as a one of, possibly removing something like that second Zapdos. But I'm not so sure. It also depends what its health is, because if it's 130, that would be pretty significant, because it wouldn't get knocked out by a standard Marshadow hit anymore like the Pikachu would. So that could be different. And also, if this goes, like, let's say we take the Pikachu build and we remove the Pikachus and we put in this card, does that mean we still need to play 7 basics? Because I don't think we would. We would probably be playing something more along the lines of either 5 or 6 basics instead of 7, which means you would also have more room in your deck for those item cards, which means your Pikachu build without the Pikachu in this card, the rest of the cards wouldn't change. And because you're taking out that 7th basic, you're kind of making up room for those tool cards. Now, how many tool cards would you also want to play? I haven't done the math on it in order to make sure that you actually get that combo off. So again, which one is more reliable is probably going to be the deciding factor on which one you play, or possibly you just play them both. And depends also which item cards we get, because the item cards we get might not even be that great and might not actually help, and might just be worse to put in the deck. And so this card might actually just see no play at all. But again, only time will tell. But anyways, with that being said, let's get into the next card. So this is the next card. It's the Leafeon. And just before we get into it, I'm pretty sure this means we're going to get a Glaceon, if I'm being completely honest. First of all, they're both Gen 4. So I think it would make sense that we get the Glaceon. As I said, I'm pretty sure we're going to get all the Gen 4 Pokemon. I don't know if we'll get any other evolutions outside of the Gen 4 at this point, but I do think we are obviously going to get the Glaceon. I don't think any of them will be EX either. So far, none of the evolutions have been EX, so I would doubt that any of them would be. But let's get into Leafeon here. A stage 1 that obviously evolves from EVs and evolutions. It only has 90 HP. We don't know its retreat cost, but it has a 2 energy requirement attack, 1 grass, 1 colorless. It's called Leafy Cyclone, and it does 90 damage. Now, this is pretty significant. However, let's talk about it. The effect of its attack says during your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. Now, this is really cool. The first 2 cards that I think of to compare this to are 1, Starmie EX, and 2, Ninetales. Both of those cards are a 2 energy requirement to do 90 damage. So, like Ninetales, it has it's a single price Pokemon that can do 90 damage for 2 energy. However, it doesn't have to discard. However, it can't attack on the next turn. But it's still, another Leafeon can still attack. So basically what you can do is you can play this in like a superior deck, okay? So in a superior deck, you get your superior online. This Pokemon only requires now 1 energy for 90 damage. So what you can do is you can keep doing this like kind of swap thing with Leafeon, where you attack for 90 damage, you retreat it, you bring in your other Leafeon, attack for 90 damage, retreat it, and then bring the other Leafeon back in the next turn and attack again, and then just keep doing 90 damage. Now, you can do this with 2 energy on each of them. It wouldn't be that hard. And then what you can do is you can also pair it again with Superior so that they only require 1 energy. And the cool thing is you can get 2 energy on this one, build up your Superior while you're doing that, attack in, retreat, and if it's 2 retreat cost, who cares? You don't even have to play a Leaf. You remove both energy. Now it has 0 energy on it. But then you bring the next Leafeon out, who has 0 energy as well. You only have to put 1 energy on it because Superior's online. And then you attack for 90 again. And then you retreat, put another energy on your next Leafeon, attack again for 90. And then you just keep doing that. You keep doing that. Now, with that being said, as much as you can do that, the 90 HP is this issue. And obviously that's a balancing thing, right? Because it has such a high attack that could potentially attack for 90 damage for 1 energy, which is humongous. It has to be pretty weak in its HP count, which it is, which means it can be knocked out by pretty much anything. It could be 2-shotted by pretty much the entire game, and can be 1-shotted by a bunch of stuff as well. Specifically, Pikachu, right? And I don't know if you want to be playing something like a blue in this deck or not. It depends, again, what you would match it with or what you would pair it with and what other cards we're getting, because that's another thing too, right? Like all of our initial thoughts are coming based off the cards we already know we have, but this is an entirely new set, right? It's 2 packs that you're going to open. There's going to be a ton of cards that are coming out. I'm assuming there's going to be a ton of new supporters, a ton of new item cards, and then item tools. So there's going to be a bunch of cards that we can be making in this, putting in these decks to make them better than we already are seeing. So only time will tell. But I do like the fact that it does 90 damage for 2. Feels very much like a Starmie EX, being able to do that. Retreat it out. I'm assuming it's only going to have a 1 retreat cost as well. I don't think Leafeon is ever traditionally a 2 retreat cost Pokemon, but it could be. But even then, like I said, if you're pairing it with something like a superior, it doesn't really matter. And being able to retreat it, remove the energy, and then put 1 on the next one is fine. Plus, you can also just put Leafs or X-Speeds in the deck to make that loop happen anyways. But with that being said, let's get into the next card. So we're going to go through this one pretty quickly. Honchkrow, 100 damage on a stage 1 Pokemon. Its attack is called Skill Drive. We have no idea what its energy requirement is, and we can't really make out the entire card. It says 50 damage to one of your opponents. Now, this could be, it doesn't look like there's a lot of room left on the card to be able to read it, but it could be something like Pokemon, just in general. It could be benched Pokemon. I don't think benched Pokemon would work or have enough room on that little space that we can't see. So I think it says Pokemon. In fact, what I actually think it does say is Pokemon EX. So that would be pretty interesting, because when you compare this to something like a Lumineon, who also has a 50 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, it's the bench. It has free retreat instead of 2 and a little bit of less HP. I feel like they wouldn't give any of the Pokemon like the exact same attack so similarly, especially since like it might also be like a 2 energy requirement. So what I'm thinking is this actually might be Pokemon EX. Now I don't actually know, and again we don't see it, and we don't. I haven't seen it posted anywhere either. So either one, it just says Pokemon, which means it's not just the bench. So that is a bit of an improvement from the Lumineon. Kind of like Zebstrika compared to, I guess, like Hitmonlee. But it would be really cool if it said Pokemon EX. Like, I would be pretty happy with that. I think that would be pretty dope, having another card like Tauros that specifically targets Pokemon EX. But again, there's no way to tell. But let's just move on to the last card, and then I'm going to get into a couple of not cards, but Pokemon that I'm pretty sure are coming because they're Gen 4, and they have to do with Pokemon we already have in the game. So we'll just go through those really quickly, and then I'll put a couple of decks on the screen. This is the last card we'll look at. It's the basic Psychic Pokemon Cresselia. It has 120 HP. It has a 2 energy attack for Moonlight Gain, and it does 50 damage. It says heal 20 damage from this Pokemon. Now, I don't think this is actually going to be put into any significant Psychic shells unless we get some like really interesting Psychic Pokemon from Gen 4. And it's right off the top of my head, I can't think of any in Gen 4. I'm not very familiar with Gen 4 completely, to be honest. I don't think this fits into Mewtwo decks. 2 for 50 and healing 20. I don't know. It doesn't seem very strong to me. It's less HP than the baby Mewtwo, so I don't see it being a tank, even with its healing factor. 50 damage is decent, but you can also just do that with a Mewtwo EX and then ramp it with Gardevoir the next turn and get your 150. So I don't really see, I kind of see this more as like a filler card, to be honest. Like, where else would you play it other than a Mewtwo deck, since it's the best Psychic deck anyways, and you wouldn't be playing it in that deck, I don't think. Plus, it's also important to note that if you attack into a Druddigon, by the way, you will heal damage, but then you'll still be hit by Rough Skin. So the heal happens first, and then the damage from Rough Skin from the Druddigon comes in after. So, and I know this because I attacked with Kabutops once, assuming that it would be like, oh, cool, like a free attack, I don't get any damage. But no, it does its whole healing thing first, and then the effect of Rough Skin comes in afterwards. Now, it is worded differently on Kabutops. It says heal the amount of damage that you put onto your opponent, that you did to your opponent's active Pokemon. So maybe because it's worded differently, it'll work differently, but I don't think it will. So I just don't see this card really being used anywhere. It kind of seems like a filler card, but I could be proved wrong, and I would be happy if I am. But now, with that being said, I'm going to put a list of Pokemon on here that we are almost guaranteed to have. It's not a guarantee, but I'm pretty sure they are, because it's Gen 4, and when Genetic Apex came out, it was all 151 Pokemon from Kanto. So I'm assuming all the Gen 4 Pokemon will be released in the Palkia and Dialga Space Time Smackdown packs. So this is a list of known Pokemon from Gen 4. And as you can see, they all evolve from Pokemon that are in Gen 1. So this is really cool. And I cannot wait for these Pokemon. I'm almost 100%. I will say 101% sure that we're getting these cards because they are Gen 4. So Magnezone, Licklicky, Rhyperior, Tangrowth, Electivire, and Magmortar. So I originally did a wish list way back before Mythical Island even came out, saying I want most of these Pokemon on the screen to come out in the Mythical Island pack, which of course they didn't, which is fine because I'm pretty sure we're getting them now. So Magnezone obviously evolves from Magneton, and it'll be pretty cool to see what its effect will be. And it would be pretty cool too if it's an EX Pokemon. I don't actually think it will be because we got a bunch of cards from other gens in Genetic Apex as well, and not a single one of them were an EX Pokemon. So I don't think that will happen. But at the end of the day, Magnezone might have a 4 energy attack just like Magneton that does some pretty significant stuff because you can ramp with Magneton from your bench. Also, Magnezone might have a ramp ability as well, maybe even being able to move energy around or something like that, which he usually did in the paper TCG. It pretty much worked. Magnezone worked exactly like how Vaporeon does now in the paper TCG, so it would be pretty cool to see that. And then Licklicky evolves from Lickitung. Lickitung obviously has that like continuous coin flip attack that does damage based on the amount of heads you flip until you flip a tails. Rhyperior, this is the one I would be way more excited for than anybody else because Rhydon is absolutely abysmal. It's honestly, in my opinion, the worst card, the most useless card in all of Pokemon Pocket right now, the biggest filler card of all time. So Rhyperior better be something super duper good. Tangrowth evolves from Tangrowth, which is also Tangrowth evolves from Tangela, which is also a pretty useless card right now. So hopefully this does something significant and doesn't just feel like another filler card. Electivire, I hope this card is pretty good. We have seen Electabuzz get some play, so that would be pretty cool. Magmar, this is the one I'm most interested, not most interested, but kind of curious about more than the others because Magmar works in Blaine, but Magmar would not. So if obviously he'll evolve from Magmar, so it'd be interesting to see where he fits and if he kind of works in the Blaine's deck to help with the synergy with that deck. So that would be pretty cool. A couple of Pokemon as well that I want to just completely talk about really quickly. There is baby Pokemon in this gen as well, especially ones that have to do with Gen 1 from Genetic Apex. Things like Mime Jr., which is the baby Pokemon for Mr. Mime. What else is there? There's Happiny, which is the baby Pokemon for Chansey. And then there's also We might also get Hitmo Tyrogue, since we, even though I don't think he's Gen 4, since we might get a Hitmo Top, which is, I believe, a Gen 3 Pokemon. And then we're in Gen 4, there's also Porygon Z, which means we might get Porygon 2, because Porygon Z evolves from Porygon 2, and Porygon 2 evolves from Porygon, who we already have in the game. But I just want to talk about Glaceon one more time, because Glaceon will be a water type Pokemon in the TCG, because it's an ice type in the video games and the anime, which means it will automatically be a water type in the card game, which is really cool, because now it might be able to play an Evolutions deck with just one energy, playing Glaceon and Vaporeon in the same deck. But anyways, those are the hopefuls and ones that I'm pretty sure are coming out, because again, it's Gen 4. But I'm going to put up a couple of decks on the screen and we'll just go over them really quickly. So this is the first deck, and it's a Palkia deck. I actually made two. I made one with Starmie. We kind of already talked about it, so I'm only going to put this one up. But I honestly think this might have like some serious legs behind it. For one, you're going to be playing a basic Pokemon that has 150 HP that could chip in for damage for just one energy, doing 30 damage. While you tank and chip for damage, you can evolve into your Blastoise and put a ton of energies on it, and then you can bring in that Blastoise with like 5 or 6 energy or whatever, and start just one-shotting a ton of Pokemon. And because it has, 180 HP on the Blastoise, it's super hard to find that breakpoint. The one deck that can do it is obviously Charizard, but we hit Charizard for weakness. And then another deck that's pretty close to doing it and can for sure do it is Gyarados. But that 180 is super duper significant. So what you can do is you can tank with your Palkia EX, chip for damage, build up your Blastoise, bring it in, take Pokemon out, get a bunch of prize cards, retreat because of its high HP, making it so hard to be knocked out with something like a Leaf. Bring in the Palkia and then have another huge attacker for 150 HP and finish the game off. And of course, put all the energy on it with Vaporeon, because we're playing 2 Vaporeon, 2 Blastoise lines, and 2 Palkia. So 2 basic Pokemon that don't evolve, 2 Stage 1 lines and 2 Stage 2 lines. And then of course, the Professor's Research and Pokeball, the 2 Misty and 2 Leaf. I actually think this deck might see some significant meta play. I could be wrong, but it would be pretty cool. We have already seen Blastoise. I do assume we are going to see Palkia EX in some way, shape, or form. And we have really yet to see any significance from Vaporeon, so it would be pretty cool to see. But now let's get into a Dialga deck. So this is the Dialga deck I made. It's a pretty standard build, to be honest. It's playing 2 Melmetal, 1 Tauros, and 1 Mew EX with the 2 Dialga EX. These are probably the 3 best Pokemon to combine it with. We already talked about some other synergies, like Celebi possibly being something cool, as well as the the Golem from Genetic Apex, and potentially something like a Centiskorch. But this seems like the most viable version of the deck for a couple of reasons. Obviously, Tauros and Mew, we know why. We can ramp the metal energies on it with Dialga, but we can also ramp them on with Melmetal, and Melmetal is pretty decent, honestly. Takes 20 less damage with 100 HP, which means it kind of has 150 HP. With something like a blue, which I did put in the deck, you can tank a shot from anything doing 150 damage. But the Meltan also ramps energy onto itself, so you have 2 energy rampers in the same deck. And Meltan is pretty significant in the meta, or could be pretty significant in certain meta situations, especially decks that like to play Druddigon, because Meltan doesn't do any attack. If you're up against a Druddigon, you'll never take the rough skin damage because you're not doing attack. You're not actually attacking into the Druddigon, so you don't take rough skin damage, which means you can just just sit there and ramp energy onto yourself. And if you ever are in a situation where you might get hit or get knocked out, you just retreat, bring in your Dialga, and then ramp with that one. So you can bring out your Melmetal and start doing 120 damage. Now, I thought about, because most recent Melmetal decks in tournaments have been playing things like Druddigon to try and help get those specific breakpoints, as well as Druddigon and Greninja. I don't know how they would fit in this deck. It feels like a lot of Pokemon, so I'm not really sure if that's something you would want to be put in these decks anymore. But being able to do 30 damage with your Dialga plus 120 from your Melmetal afterwards is 150, so you might be getting those breakpoints anyways, but only time will tell. I put in 2 X speed, 1 potion, because I think it's important to be able to retreat and get the exact Pokemon you want in. You have teched in Tauros and Mew, so you do want to be able to get those Pokemon in or out of the active. So we're playing 2 X speed, 2 Leaf, 1 Giovanni, because we do want to hit certain breakpoints with this deck because we're not playing something like a Druddigon anymore. 1 Sabrina, just because 1 Sabrina is good, and then the standard 2 Pokeball, 2 Professor Research, and then the 1 potion, so that we might be able to heal to fix some breakpoints. Again, I don't know if Dialga's 100 attack will be significant. I really think we're going to be playing it for its rampant ability, and so this might be a new viable deck for Steel in the meta. Again, only time will tell, but let's get into my last deck, which is the Lucario deck. So this is the Lucario deck I made, and basically what I did is I kind of looked at like the Aerodactyl shells, and I decided to just remove the Aerodactyl and any type of Farfetch or Primeape and just play these Pokemon. So it's 1 Hitmonlee, 1 Marshadow, 2 Hitmonchan, and 2 Lucario lines. So you would still be playing 6 basics, but the reason why I removed all the other Pokemon is because you would just have too many Pokemon in the deck. I think removing Farfetch makes a ton of sense now, because Lucario only boosts fighting type Pokemon's attacks by 20. So removing those were pretty easy, but then you also have to think, okay, am I still going to play the Aerodactyl, and am I still going to play the Primeape? I don't think we want this deck any longer to be a deck that plays an EX Pokemon. I removed that entirely, especially since we're getting enough damage, I think, now with Lucario to not really be playing the Aerodactyl. However, like I said in the breakdown, Aerodactyl doing 100 damage into something like a Pikachu is pretty good, because then with weakness it will do 120. So I'm not saying you can't play it, but I did decide to take it out, and the reason for that is because we wanted to play Hitmonchan. So basically what Hitmonchan does, it replaces the Farfetch'd, and Lucario replaces the Aerodactyls, but then the one of Hitmonlee and Marshadow stay the same. So Hitmonlee, you still want to be able to snipe Magikarps. Marshadow's way too valuable not to have in the deck. And then the Hitmonchan replaces the Primeape slash Farfetch, because usually it's either or one of those in the deck, and never really both at the same time. And the reason why we chose Hitmonchan is because even though he only does 30 damage, with Lucario he's doing 50, which is now equal to Primeape and higher than Farfetch'd, and so therefore it already has more damage from Farfetch'd and doesn't have to evolve like the Primeape. With 2, again, it's doing 70, and with a Giovanni, it's doing 80 damage for just 1 energy against a electric type, or basically anything it hits for weakness, dark types as well. It would do 100 damage for just 1 energy. So I think Hitmonchan is actually going to be played a lot because of Lucario, but again, time will only tell. The one thing about Lucario that is kind of concerning for a deck like this is the fact that it has 2 retreat costs. I don't think you want to be playing Leafs in this deck. However, I am putting 2 X speeds because you do want to be able to get those Pokemon out of the active when you need to get the ones you want in. Obviously, because we only play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Pokemon, you have a ton of space to be playing 12 trainer cards all together. So the 2 XP, 2 Potion, the obviously Professor's Research and Pokeball, 2 Sabrina, and 2 Giovanni. This is still an aggro deck at the end of the day, so you still want to be playing those Giovannis even if you have the attack boost from Lucario, because at the same time, this kind of feels like a Blaine's deck now. Like Giovanni in this deck feels like you're playing Blaine because Lucario is doing 20 more plus the Giovanni. And again, Lucario stacks twice if you have 2 Lucario on the field. So I think this deck's actually going to be really good going forward. But again, only time will tell. But anyways, that's it for the video. I've talked for long enough. It's almost an hour in. So leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you think of all the new cards. Let me know what you think of the decks, how you think these will change going forward. Like, subscribe, and share. And as always, keep cooking.